The moving truck pulled away from 1247 Maple Street, leaving tire marks on the perfect driveway. Marcus Johnson stood in front of his new house and took a deep breath. After 15 years in the Navy, he was finally home for good. The house was bigger than anything he had ever lived in before. 2 stories, white paint, green shutters, and a yard big enough for his daughter to play in. Sarah Johnson came out the front door carrying a box marked "Kitchen." She was tired but smiling. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail and she wore old jeans and a t-shirt. Moving was hard work, but they had finally made it. After years of living in small apartments near military bases, they owned a real home. "What do you think, honey?" Sarah asked, setting the box down and looking at the house. "Is it what you dreamed about during all those long nights overseas?" Marcus wrapped his arms around his wife. At 6 feet tall with broad shoulders, he made Sarah look small, but his touch was gentle. "It's perfect," he said. "Maya is going to love having her own room in that big backyard." As if she heard her name, 8-year-old Maya came running out of the house. Her pigtails bounced as she moved, and her face was bright with excitement. "Daddy, Mommy, come see my room. It has 2 windows and I can see the park from one of them." The family walked through their new neighborhood later that evening. Willowbrook was the kind of place Marcus had dreamed about while sleeping in military tents. The streets were clean and quiet. Every house had a neat lawn and flowers in the front yard. Street lights lined the sidewalks, and children's bikes sat in driveways. It looked like the perfect place to raise a family. "Look at all the big houses," Maya said, skipping between her parents. "And there's no loud trucks or sirens like our old place." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's right, baby. Nice and quiet so you can sleep well for school." They passed a small park with swings and a slide. A few children were playing, while their parents watched from benches. Marcus noticed how the parents looked at them as they walked by. Some smiled and waved. Others just stared. A few picked up their children and left the park. "People seem careful here," Sarah said quietly to Marcus. "They just don't know us yet," Marcus replied. But he had noticed the stares too. In the military, he worked with people of all colors. Nobody cared what you looked like as long as you did your job. But he knew the civilian world could be different. The next morning, Sarah walked Maya to the school bus stop. 3 other children waited with their mothers. Sarah smiled and said hello, but the other women only nodded. They talked quietly among themselves and kept looking at Sarah and Maya. "Hi, I'm Maya," Maya said to a girl about her age. "We just moved here. What's your name?" The girl looked at her mother before answering. "I'm Jenny," she said softly. "Do you like this school?" Maya asked. "I'm kind of nervous about starting a new place." Jenny's mother took her daughter's hand. "Come on, Jenny. The bus will be here soon." She moved away from Sarah and Maya. Sarah felt her face get hot, but she kept smiling. Maya looked confused but didn't say anything. When the yellow school bus arrived, Maya climbed on and found a seat by herself. Sarah waved until the bus disappeared around the corner. Walking back home, Sarah noticed how perfect everything looked. Every lawn was cut exactly the same length. Every flower bed had the same types of flowers. Even the mailboxes looked identical. It was beautiful, but something felt strange about it. That afternoon, Sarah was unpacking boxes in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find an elderly white woman holding a plate covered with a red cloth. "Hello, dear," the woman said with a sweet smile. "I'm Mrs. Patterson from next door. I brought you some cookies to welcome you to the neighborhood." Sarah's face lit up. "Oh, how wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm Sarah Johnson. Would you like to come in for some coffee?" Mrs. Patterson looked past Sarah into the house. "Oh, that's very kind, but I can't stay long. I just wanted to say hello and, well, give you a little advice." "Advice?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Patterson's smile became smaller. "This is a very nice neighborhood, dear. We all work hard to keep it that way. There are rules here, homeowner association rules. It's important that everyone follows them so our property values stay high." Sarah nodded. "Of course. We definitely want to be good neighbors." "What kind of rules?" "Oh, you know, lawn care, house colors, where you can park your cars, things like that." Someone will be by soon to explain everything. Mrs. Patterson handed Sarah the cookies. Welcome to Willowbrook, dear. After Mrs. Patterson left, Sarah looked at the cookies. They smelled delicious, but something about the conversation felt wrong. The woman had been polite, but her words seemed like a warning. That evening, Marcus came home from his last week of military paperwork. He found Sarah in the kitchen making dinner and Maya doing homework at the table. "How was your first day in the neighborhood?" he asked, kissing Sarah on the cheek. "Interesting," Sarah said. "The other parents at the bus stop weren't very friendly, and our neighbor brought cookies but also gave me a speech about rules." Marcus frowned. "What kind of rules?" "Homeowner association stuff. She said someone would come by to explain." Sarah stirred the pasta sauce. "I looked up the HOA online today. They seem to have a lot of rules about everything. As long as we follow the rules, there shouldn't be any problems," Marcus said, but his voice sounded unsure. Maya looked up from her homework. "Daddy, why did that girl's mom pull her away from me today? Did I do something wrong?" Marcus sat down next to his daughter. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. Some people just need time to get to know new neighbors." But as Marcus tucked Maya into bed that night, he wondered if moving to Willowbrook had been a mistake. He had fought in wars to protect American families. He never thought he would have to worry about protecting his own family in an American neighborhood. Sarah stood at the window looking out at the quiet street. The streetlights made everything look peaceful and safe, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from the shadows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she hoped their family was strong enough to face whatever came their way in their new home. Derek Mitchell sat in his car outside the Willowbrook shopping center, eating a gas station sandwich. His security guard uniform was wrinkled and his badge was crooked. At 38 years old, Derek had thin brown hair and a round belly that hung over his belt. He hated his job watching empty stores at night, but it was the only work he could get. 5 years ago, Derek had been a real police officer. He loved the uniform, the badge, and the way people looked at him with respect. But that all ended when he was caught hitting a suspect who was already handcuffed. The police department fired him, and no other department would hire him. Now he spent his nights walking around a mostly empty mall, checking doors and feeling sorry for himself. Derek's phone buzzed with a text from his supervisor. "Mitchell, your shift starts at 6 p.m. Don't be late again." Derek looked at the clock. It was only 4 p.m. He had 2 hours to kill and nowhere to go. He drove slowly through Willowbrook, looking at the big houses and nice cars. This was where he should be living, not in his small apartment with the broken air conditioner. Derek had grown up in this town when it was different, when it was mostly white families like his. Now everything was changing and he didn't like it. As Derek drove down Maple Street, he saw the black family unloading more boxes from their car. The man was tall and looked strong. The woman was pretty, and their little girl was playing in the yard. Derek felt angry just looking at them. These people didn't belong here, they were ruining his neighborhood. Derek pulled over and watched them for a few minutes. Then he had an idea. A smile spread across his face as he thought about it. He drove home to his apartment and opened his closet. In the back, behind his old clothes, was a box of police equipment he had kept when he was fired. A badge, handcuffs, and some official-looking papers. Derek had been thinking about this plan for months. Willowbrook had a homeowner association, but it was run by old people who didn't want to deal with problems. They mostly just collected money and argued about flower colors. What if someone took charge? What if someone made sure the rules were really followed? That evening, Derek put on dark pants and a white shirt. He pinned his old police badge to his chest and clipped handcuffs to his belt. In his car, he had a clipboard with official-looking papers he had printed at the library. He looked in the mirror and practiced his serious face. "HOA enforcement officer," he said out loud. "I'm here about a neighborhood violation." Derek drove to the house of Mr. Wilson, an elderly man who lived alone. Mr. Wilson was on the real HOA board and would believe anything Derek told him. Derek knocked on the door and waited. "Who is it?" came a shaky voice from inside. "HOA enforcement. Sir, I need to speak with you about neighborhood security." Mr. Wilson opened the door slowly. He was a small man with white hair and thick glasses. When he saw Derek's badge and serious expression, his eyes got wide. "Oh my," Mr. Wilson said. "Is everything all right? Are we in some kind of trouble?" Derek smiled in what he hoped was a reassuring way. "No trouble for you, sir. But we've had some complaints about new residents not following community standards. The HOA board asked me to help make sure everyone understands the rules. I didn't know we had an enforcement officer," Mr. Wilson said, looking confused. "It's a new position," Derek lied smoothly. "Crime is going up and property values are at risk. The board decided we needed someone to make sure standards are maintained." Derek showed Mr. Wilson his fake papers. "I'll be patrolling the neighborhood and handling violations so you board members don't have to deal with unpleasant situations." Mr. Wilson nodded slowly. "That sounds very helpful. Some of us on the board are getting too old to handle confrontations." "Exactly, sir. You can focus on the important decisions while I take care of the day-to-day enforcement." Derek handed Mr. Wilson a business card he had made at a print shop. "If you see any violations, just call me and I'll handle it." After leaving Mr. Wilson's house, Derek felt excited for the first time in years. He had found a way to have power, again, to make people respect him. And he knew exactly where to start. Derek drove past the Johnson house again. The family was inside now and lights were on in the windows. He could see them moving around, probably still unpacking. They had no idea what was coming. Over the next few days, Derek visited 3 more HOA board members. He told them all the same story about being hired for enforcement. The elderly board members were relieved to have someone else handle problems. They gave Derek copies of the HOA rules and told him to keep the neighborhood looking perfect. Derek studied the rules carefully. There were regulations about lawn height, paint colors, and where trash cans could be placed. But Derek planned to be much more creative than that. He would find violations even where none existed. He would make life difficult for anyone who didn't belong. On Friday evening, Derek put on his fake uniform again and drove to the Johnson house. He parked in front and sat for a few minutes watching. The husband's car wasn't in the driveway. Perfect. Derek liked to start with the wives when the husbands weren't around. Women were easier to intimidate. Derek walked up to the front door and knocked loudly. After a moment, the woman answered. She was wearing casual clothes and looked tired from unpacking. "Yes?" she said politely. Derek showed his badge and pulled out his clipboard. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Mitchell with HOA Enforcement. I need to discuss some violations with you." Sarah looked confused. "Violations? We just moved in a few days ago." "That's no excuse for not following community standards," Derek said in his most official voice. "I've observed several issues that need immediate attention." Derek looked at his fake papers and frowned. "Your grass is half an inch too long in the front yard. Your mailbox post needs fresh paint. And you have children's toys visible from the street, which violates the community appearance standards." Sarah's confusion turned to surprise. "I'm sorry, but I've read the HOA rules online. I don't remember seeing anything about toy visibility or specific grass length measurements." Derek's face got red. He wasn't used to people questioning him. "Ma'am, I'm the enforcement officer. I know these rules better than you do. Are you arguing with an official?" "I'm not arguing," Sarah said, calmly. "I just want to understand exactly which rules we're breaking so we can fix the problems." Derek realized he needed to be smarter about this. Getting angry on the first visit might make her suspicious. He forced himself to smile. "Of course, ma'am. I understand you're new here. Tell you what, I'll give you 1 week to take care of these issues. After that, there will be fines." Derek handed her a fake violation notice. "Welcome to Willowbrook. I'm sure you want to fit in with your new neighbors." As Derek walked back to his car, he felt proud of himself. He had established his authority without going too far. Next time, he would find bigger violations. And if this family didn't learn to respect him, he would make their lives very uncomfortable. Sarah watched the man drive away and looked at the violation notice. Something felt wrong about the whole situation, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. She decided to research the HOA rules more carefully and maybe call the main office to ask about this enforcement officer. Derek drove home feeling satisfied. This was just the beginning. Soon everyone in Willowbrook would know that he was in charge of keeping the neighborhood the way it should be, and anyone who didn't belong would learn to leave one way or another. Sarah Johnson spent her weekend researching the HOA rules and trying to understand what Officer Mitchell meant about violations. She printed out all the official documents from the Homeowner Association website and read them twice. Nothing mentioned specific grass lengths or restrictions on children's toys being visible from the street. On Monday morning, Sarah called the HOA management office while Maya was at school. A friendly woman named Linda answered the phone. Willowbrook HOA, this is Linda speaking. Hi, my name is Sarah Johnson. I just moved to Maple Street, and I had a visit from an enforcement officer named Mitchell. I wanted to verify some of the violations he mentioned. There was a pause on the other end. I'm sorry, did you say enforcement officer? We don't have any enforcement officers. The HOA board handles violations through written notices and our management company. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Are you sure? He had a badge and official papers. He said the board hired him for enforcement. Ma'am, I can guarantee you that no such position exists. Can you describe this person? Sarah described Derek Mitchell and told Linda about the violation notice. Linda sounded concerned and promised to contact the board members immediately. She also suggested Sarah call the police if the man returned. After hanging up, Sarah felt scared and confused. Why would someone pretend to be an HOA officer? What did he really want? She thought about calling Marcus, but he was in the middle of important training exercises. She didn't want to worry him unless it was absolutely necessary. That afternoon, Derek returned while Sarah was getting the mail. He walked up to her with his clipboard and fake badge, looking official and serious. Mrs. Johnson, I'm back to check on your progress with the violations. Sarah's heart started beating faster, but she tried to stay calm. Actually, I called the HOA office today. They told me there's no such thing as an enforcement officer position. Derek's face changed. His friendly smile disappeared and his eyes got cold. Ma'am, I don't know who you talked to, but you're mistaken. I work directly with the board members, not the management company. Which board members? Sarah asked. I'd like to speak with them directly. Derek stepped closer to Sarah, using his height to try to intimidate her. Mrs. Johnson, I don't think you understand how things work in this neighborhood. People here have certain expectations. When new residents don't follow the rules, it causes problems for everyone. Sarah backed toward her house but kept her voice steady. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying you need to learn your place, Derek said, dropping his fake official tone. This is a nice neighborhood full of good families. We don't want any trouble from people who don't fit in. Sarah understood now. This wasn't about grass length or toy violations. This was about the color of her skin. I think you should leave my property, she said firmly. Derek smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. Oh, I'll be back, Mrs. Johnson. I'll be watching your family, very carefully. Every little mistake, every tiny violation, and you'll hear from me. After Derek left, Sarah locked all the doors and closed the curtains. She was shaking as she called Linda at the HOA office back. Linda was shocked to hear about Derek's return and promised to warn all the board members immediately. She also gave Sarah the direct phone numbers of the board president and vice president. Sarah called Mr. Wilson, the board president. He sounded confused and elderly when she described Derek Mitchell. Oh yes, Officer Mitchell, Mr. Wilson said. Very professional young man. He showed me his credentials last week. Mr. Wilson, the HOA management office says there is no enforcement officer position. This man is lying to you. There was a long pause. That's very concerning. Are you sure? Sarah patiently explained everything she had learned. Mr. Wilson promised to contact the other board members and get to the bottom of the situation, but Sarah could tell the old man was confused and might not remember their conversation clearly. Over the next 2 weeks, Derek's harassment got worse. He always came when Marcus was away at training. He would park in front of their house and just sit there for hours watching. He left fake violation notices on their door for ridiculous things like mailbox positioned 2 inches too far left and grass color not consistent with neighborhood standards. Sarah started keeping a detailed record of every incident. She took pictures of Derek's car and wrote down the dates and times of his visits. She also installed a security camera by the front door, though she didn't tell Derek about it. Maya began having trouble sleeping. She asked why the mean man kept coming to their house and why some of her classmates' parents didn't want their children playing with her. Sarah tried to explain that some people had wrong ideas about other people, but it was hard to make an 8-year-old understand racism. "Are we bad people, Mommy?" Maya asked one night as Sarah tucked her into bed. "No, baby. We're good people, in a beautiful family. Some people just need time to learn that." But Sarah was losing her patience. Derek's visits were getting more frequent and more threatening. He had started making comments about how accidents could happen to people who didn't listen to warnings. Sarah knew she needed to do something before the situation got worse. She called Marcus during one of his brief breaks from training. She tried to sound calm, but Marcus could hear the stress in her voice. "Someone's been bothering you," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Sarah told him everything about Derek Mitchell and his fake HOA enforcement scheme. As she talked, she could hear Marcus getting quieter, which meant he was getting angry. Marcus was always calmest when he was most dangerous. "Have you called the police?" Marcus asked. "He hasn't technically done anything illegal yet. He's just being threatening and obnoxious. The police would probably tell me to call when he actually commits a crime." "Sarah, I want you to start carrying your phone with you everywhere. If this guy shows up again, call 911 immediately. Don't try to handle him alone. When will you be home?" 2 more weeks. But if this gets worse, I'll request emergency leave." "No, don't do that. Your career is too important. I can handle this for 2 more weeks." But Sarah wasn't sure she could. Derek was getting bolder and more aggressive. Yesterday, he had walked all the way up to their front door and tried to look through the windows. When she came outside to confront him, he just smiled and said he was inspecting for code violations. The next morning, Sarah was working in their front garden when she noticed Mrs. Patterson watching from her yard. The elderly woman walked over to the fence between their properties. "Hello, dear," Mrs. Patterson said. "I see you've been having some trouble with the HOA officer." "He's not a real HOA officer," Sarah said. "He's just some man who's been harassing us." Mrs. Patterson looked surprised. "Not real? But he seemed so official. He visited me last week and asked about your family. Wanted to know your husband's work schedule and whether you had any other violations." Sarah felt sick. Derek had been asking their neighbors about Marcus's schedule. "What did you tell him?" "Just that your husband travels for work and you're home alone a lot." "Was that wrong?" Sarah forced herself to smile. "It's fine, Mrs. Patterson. But if he comes back, please don't give him any information about our family." That afternoon, Derek returned with a new attitude. He was more aggressive than ever, walking right up to Sarah while she was getting the mail. "Mrs. Johnson, you've been talking to people about me, spreading lies. That's going to cause you problems." "I've been telling people the truth. You're not an HOA officer, and you have no authority here." Derek stepped close enough that Sarah could smell his bad breath. "Lady, I don't need official authority to make your life miserable. This is my neighborhood, and people like you don't belong here. The sooner you figure that out, the better." Sarah looked Derek right in the eyes. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you," Derek said with a nasty smile. "But if you're too stupid to learn, maybe you need a more direct lesson." Sarah went inside and immediately called the police. She told them about Derek's escalating threats and harassment. The officer who took her report sounded sympathetic but explained that until Derek actually committed a crime or directly threatened violence, there wasn't much they could do. "We can increase patrols in your area," the officer said, "and if he shows up again, call us immediately." But Sarah knew the police couldn't be there all the time. Derek was getting more dangerous, and Marcus was still away. She was running out of options, and Derek seemed to know it. His confidence was growing every day, and Sarah feared that soon threats wouldn't be enough for him. That night, as Sarah lay awake listening for any sounds outside, she didn't know that Derek was sitting in his car at the end of the street, watching. their house and planning his next move. He had decided that talking wasn't working anymore. It was time to teach this family a lesson they would never forget. Derek Mitchell had been planning this moment for 3 days. He watched the Johnson house from different spots around the neighborhood, learning Sarah's routine. She took her daughter to the bus stop every morning at 7:30. She went grocery shopping on Tuesday afternoons. And every Thursday she spent time working in her front garden while her daughter played in the backyard. It was Thursday afternoon, and Derek was ready. He had been drinking since lunch, building up his courage. The alcohol made him feel stronger and more confident. He was tired of playing games with this woman. It was time to show her who was really in charge of this neighborhood. Derek parked his car 2 blocks away and walked to the Johnson house. He could see Sarah kneeling by her flower bed, pulling weeds and planting new flowers. She wore gardening gloves and an old t-shirt. Her daughter was in the backyard, playing on a swing set that Marcus had built the weekend before. Derek straightened his fake badge and walked up the driveway like he owned the place. Sarah looked up when she heard his footsteps. Her face immediately showed fear and anger. "Mr. Mitchell, I've told you to stay away from my property," Sarah said, standing up and pulling off her gardening gloves. "Mrs. Johnson, we have a serious problem," Derek said loudly. His voice was slightly slurred from drinking. "I've received multiple complaints about your garden decorations." Sarah looked confused. "What decorations?" Derek pointed to a small garden gnome that Maya had picked out at the store. It was sitting next to some flowers, smiling with a red hat and blue overalls. "That thing is a violation of community appearance standards. It's tacky and brings down property values." "You've got to be kidding me," Sarah said. "It's a garden gnome. Half the yards in this neighborhood have garden decorations. Not like that one," Derek said, stepping closer. "That thing screams, well, let's just say it doesn't fit the image we're trying to maintain here." Sarah realized Derek was trying to find a way to call the gnome offensive without saying what he really meant. She was tired of his games and decided to stand her ground. "Mr. Mitchell, I've checked the real HOA rules 3 times. There is absolutely nothing about garden gnomes or any other lawn decorations. You're making this up, just like you've made up every other violation." Derek's face got red. The alcohol and his anger were making it hard for him to think clearly. "Lady, I am an official HOA enforcement officer, and I'm telling you that thing has got to go. Right now." "No," Sarah said firmly. "You're not an official anything. You're just a man who's been harassing my family for weeks. And I want you to leave my property immediately." Maya heard the loud voices and came running from the backyard. "Mommy, is everything okay?" Derek looked at the little girl and felt his anger spike even higher. This was exactly what was wrong with the neighborhood. These people moving in, changing things, bringing their kids to play with the good children who belonged here. "Mommy, it's the mean man again," Maya said, hiding behind Sarah. "Go back to the backyard, baby," Sarah said calmly. "I'll be right there." "Yeah, little girl, you better run along," Derek said with a nasty laugh. "Your mommy and I are having an adult conversation about rules she doesn't want to follow." "Don't talk to my daughter," Sarah said, her voice getting stronger. "Maya, go inside the house right now." Maya ran toward the front door, but she was scared and confused. She stopped on the porch to look back at her mother, not understanding why the mean man kept coming to their house. Derek watched the little girl run and felt powerful. These people were finally learning to be afraid of him. He turned back to Sarah with a mean smile. "Mrs. Johnson, you've been nothing but trouble since you moved here. Questioning my authority, calling people about me, refusing to follow simple rules. That ends today. The only thing ending today is your harassment of my family," Sarah said. "I've documented every single one of your visits. I have pictures of your car, recordings of your threats, and statements from neighbors. The police know all about you." Derek laughed. "The police? What are they going to do? I haven't broken any laws. I'm just doing my job, making sure neighborhood standards are maintained." "Your job? You're a security guard at a shopping mall. You were fired from the police force for beating people up. I did my research on you, Derek Mitchell." Derek's smile disappeared. Nobody was supposed to know about his past. He had worked hard to keep that information secret. The fact that this Woman had found out made him feel exposed and dangerous. "You've been investigating me?" Derek said, his voice getting louder. "Who the hell do you think you are?" "I'm a mother protecting her family from a liar and a bully," Sarah said. "And I'm telling you for the last time to get off my property." Derek stepped so close to Sarah that she could smell the alcohol on his breath. "Listen to me very carefully. You uppity little—" He stopped himself before saying the word he was thinking, but Sarah knew what he meant. "Get away from me," Sarah said, backing toward the house. "You think you can move into my neighborhood and disrespect me? You think you can call people and spread lies about me? You think your husband being gone all the time makes you tough?" Derek grabbed Sarah's arm. "I know all about your family. I know when your husband leaves and when he comes back. I know where your daughter goes to school. I know you're here alone, most of the time with no one to protect you." Sarah tried to pull her arm away, but Derek's grip was strong. "Let go of me right now." "Not until you understand something," Derek said. "This is my neighborhood. These are my people, and you don't belong here. The sooner you pack up and leave, the safer your little family will be." Sarah looked toward the house and saw Maya watching from the window, her face scared and confused. That sight gave Sarah strength. No one was going to threaten her daughter or make her feel unsafe in her own home. "I said let go of me," Sarah said loudly. "Or what?" Derek laughed. "What are you going to do about it?" "I'm going to call the police and have you arrested for assault." Derek's grip got tighter. "You're not calling anyone. You're going to march over there and throw that ugly gnome in the trash. Then you're going to apologize for disrespecting me. And then you're going to think real hard about whether this is the right neighborhood for your family." "Absolutely not," Sarah said. Derek had reached his breaking point. Weeks of planning and threatening had led to this moment, and this woman still wouldn't show him the respect he deserved. Without thinking, he raised his free hand and slapped Sarah hard across the face. The sound was loud and sharp. Sarah's head snapped to the side and she stumbled backward. Her cheek immediately turned red, and her eyes filled with tears of pain and shock. Maya screamed from the window. "Mommy!" Derek realized what he had done, but instead of feeling sorry, he felt satisfied. Finally, this woman understood who was in charge. Finally, she would show him the respect he deserved. "Now you—" "No, I'm serious," Derek said. "Next time, maybe you'll listen the first time I tell you something." Sarah touched her burning cheek and looked at Derek with a mixture of fear and rage. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." "I doubt that," Derek said. "But if you call the police, remember that it's your word against mine. And I'm the one with the badge and the official authority." Derek walked back to his car feeling proud of himself. He had finally taken control of the situation. These people would think twice before disrespecting him again. And if they didn't learn from this lesson, the next one would be even harder. Inside the house, Sarah held Maya while her daughter cried. The little girl didn't understand why the mean man had hurt her mommy, and Sarah didn't know how to explain it. All she knew was that Derek Mitchell had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. What Derek didn't know was that the security camera by the front door had recorded everything. Every word, every threat, and every second of the assault was captured in perfect digital clarity. And in 6 days, when Marcus Johnson returned from his training, Derek would learn that some husbands are much more dangerous than others. Sarah called the police immediately, but she also did something else. She called Marcus and left a voicemail. That would change everything. "Marcus, you need to come home now. Someone just hit me in front of our daughter, and this can't wait 2 more weeks." Marcus Johnson was in the middle of a night training exercise when his phone buzzed with Sarah's voicemail. Navy SEALs weren't supposed to check personal messages during operations, but something made him look. When he heard his wife's shaking voice saying someone had hit her, everything else stopped mattering. Marcus found his commanding officer immediately. "Sir, I need emergency leave. There's been an assault on my family." Commander Roberts looked at Marcus's face and knew this wasn't a request. "How long do you need?" "However long it takes to handle the situation, sir." 3 hours later, Marcus was on a military transport plane heading home. During the flight, he listened to Sarah's voicemail 5 more times. Each time he heard the fear in her voice, his anger grew colder and more focused. This was the kind of calm, deadly anger that had made him one of the Navy's most effective operators. Sarah met Marcus at the airport. Her left cheek still showed a faint bruise, and Maya clung to her father like she hadn't seen him in years instead of weeks. "Daddy, the mean man hurt Mommy," Maya said, her voice small and scared. "He was yelling and then he hit her and made her cry." Marcus knelt down to his daughter's level. His voice was gentle, but his eyes were ice cold. "Maya, I promise you that man will never hurt Mommy again. Can you trust Daddy on that?" Maya nodded, feeling safer just having her father home. In the car, Sarah told Marcus everything. She showed him the fake violation notices, the security camera footage of Derek's visits, and finally the video of the assault. Marcus watched the footage 3 times without saying a word. When Derek's hand hit Sarah's face on screen, Marcus's jaw muscles tightened, but his expression never changed. "Tell me about this man," Marcus said quietly. Sarah gave Marcus all the information she had gathered about Derek Mitchell, his real job, his fake HOA scheme, his history of being fired from the police force, even his address and the car he drove. Sarah had been thorough, and Marcus was proud of how smart and careful his wife had been. "What did the police say when you called them?" Marcus asked. "They came and took a report. They said the video was good evidence and they'd follow up. But the officer seemed to think Derek would just get a slap on the wrist for simple assault." Marcus nodded slowly. "What else?" Sarah hesitated. "I got the feeling they thought I might be exaggerating, like maybe it wasn't as serious as I made it sound." "And the HOA board? Mr. Wilson, the president, finally understands that Derek was lying to them. He's embarrassed and sorry, but that doesn't help us now." That evening, after Maya went to bed, Marcus sat in his home office and did what he did best: gathered intelligence. He used his military access to databases and called in favors from friends in law enforcement. By midnight, he knew everything there was to know about Derek Mitchell. Derek had been fired from 3 security jobs for inappropriate behavior toward women. He had been arrested twice for bar fights but never convicted. He lived alone in a rundown apartment and spent most of his free time drinking at a place called Murphy's Tavern. Most importantly, Derek had been bragging to people about teaching some uppity black family a lesson. Marcus also learned that Derek had been targeting other minority families in the neighborhood. The Garcias down the street had received fake violation notices about their car. An elderly Korean couple had been harassed about their garden. Derek's scheme was bigger than just the Johnson family. The next morning, Marcus drove through Willowbrook and studied Derek's pattern. He noted the times Derek usually appeared, the route he took through the neighborhood, and where he liked to park and watch houses. Marcus also talked to neighbors who had been too scared to speak up before. With a Navy SEAL asking questions, people were suddenly more willing to share what they had seen. Mrs. Chen, the Korean woman Derek had harassed, told Marcus that Derek had threatened to have her husband deported if they didn't follow his fake rules. Mr. Garcia said Derek had scratched his car when he refused to pay a bogus fine. "Why didn't anyone report this to the police?" Marcus asked. "We were scared," Mrs. Chen admitted. "He said he was official, and we didn't want trouble with authorities." Marcus understood. Immigrant families often feared getting involved with police, even when they were victims. Derek had been smart to target people who wouldn't fight back. On Wednesday afternoon, Marcus was working in his garage when Derek's car drove slowly past the house. Derek saw Marcus and immediately recognized that the husband was home. Derek had planned to make another visit to Sarah, but seeing the tall, muscular man in the driveway made him nervous. Derek drove around the block and parked where he could watch the house. He needed to know more about this husband before making his next move. From his car, Derek could see Marcus working with tools, moving with the precise, controlled motions of someone with military training. That evening, Derek went to Murphy's Tavern to drink and think. He told his drinking buddies about the problem he was having with the black family on Maple Street. "The wife was getting mouthy, so I had to set her straight," Derek bragged. "Gave her a little slap to teach her some manners." "What about the husband?" asked Tommy, a regular at the bar. "Big guy, looks like military," Derek said. "But he's probably just another government soldier boy. They're all tough until they meet real authority." Derek ordered another beer and continued talking. I've been thinking about paying them another visit. Maybe the husband needs to learn the same lesson as his wife. What Derek didn't know was that Marcus was sitting in his car in the parking lot, listening to every word through the tavern's open windows. Marcus had followed Derek from his apartment, wanting to understand exactly who he was dealing with. Hearing Derek brag about hitting Sarah made Marcus's hands grip the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. But Marcus was a professional. He didn't act on emotion. He gathered information, made plans, and executed them with precision. Marcus followed Derek home and watched him stumble up the stairs to his apartment. Derek was drunk and sloppy, completely unaware that he was being watched by someone far more dangerous than he could imagine. The next morning, Marcus called Commander Roberts. "Sir, I need to extend my emergency leave by a few days." "Everything all right, Johnson?" "It will be, sir. I'm handling a threat assessment situation. Do you need backup?" Marcus smiled for the first time since coming home. "No, sir. This is a single-target problem. I can handle it alone." That afternoon, Derek made his biggest mistake yet. He saw Sarah working in the front yard and decided to make another visit. But this time, Marcus was home. Derek pulled up to the house and got out of his car with his usual swagger. He didn't see Marcus watching from the garage until it was too late to back down. "You must be the husband," Derek called out, trying to sound confident. "I'm Officer Mitchell with HOA enforcement. I need to discuss some ongoing violations with your family." Marcus walked slowly toward Derek. Every step was controlled and purposeful. When he spoke, his voice was calm and quiet. "My name is Marcus Johnson. I understand you've been bothering my wife and daughter." Derek looked up at Marcus and felt the first hint of real fear. This man was bigger than he had looked from a distance, and there was something in his eyes that made Derek's confidence start to crack. "Just doing my job, sir," Derek said, but his voice wasn't as steady as he wanted it to be. Marcus stopped 3 feet away from Derek and looked him in the eyes. "What job is that exactly?" "HOA enforcement, making sure neighborhood standards are maintained." Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "I know exactly who you are, Derek Mitchell, and I know exactly what you did to my wife." Derek's face went pale as he realized that this man knew his real name. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You slapped my wife in front of my daughter," Marcus said, his voice still quiet but somehow more frightening than if he had been yelling. "You grabbed her, threatened her, and put your hands on her." Derek started backing toward his car. That's not what happened." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Derek the security camera footage. "This is exactly what happened, and now you're going to learn something about consequences." Derek ran for his car, but he knew running wouldn't save him. He had made the worst mistake of his life. He had attacked the wife of a Navy SEAL, and now that SEAL was home. As Derek drove away, his hands shaking on the steering wheel, he didn't know that Marcus had already decided exactly how this situation was going to end. Derek thought he understood violence and intimidation, but he was about to learn the difference between a bully and a warrior. Marcus Johnson spent Thursday night planning like he was preparing for a military mission. He sat at his computer with a cup of coffee and a notepad, building a complete case against Derek Mitchell. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, and Marcus knew the difference. First, Marcus contacted Detective Lisa Martinez at the local police department. He had met her through a veterans support group, and she specialized in domestic violence and harassment cases. "Detective Martinez, this is Marcus Johnson. I need to discuss an assault case involving my wife." "Marcus, I heard about what happened. I'm sorry your family went through that. Is there something wrong with how the case is being handled?" Marcus explained Derek's larger pattern of harassment and intimidation. He shared the evidence he had gathered about other families Derek had targeted. "This isn't just about my wife. This man has been running a criminal operation in our neighborhood for months." Detective Martinez was quiet for a moment. "Marcus, what you're describing sounds like civil rights violations, fraud, and systematic harassment. This is bigger than simple assault." "That's what I thought. Can you help me build a federal case?" Send me everything you have. I'll contact the FBI's Civil Rights Division. Next, Marcus called his old friend Jake Sullivan, who worked for the FBI in their domestic terrorism unit. Marcus and Jake had served together before Jake left the military for law enforcement. Jake, I need advice on a civil rights case. Marcus explained Derek's fake HOA scheme and how he was targeting minority families. Jake listened carefully and asked detailed questions. Marcus, this guy is checking a lot of boxes for federal prosecution. Impersonating an official, fraud, civil rights violations, and if he's using interstate communications for any of this, we can add wire fraud. What do you need to build a case? Evidence. Lots of it. And if you can get him to admit to his crimes, on record, that would seal the deal. Marcus smiled. Getting confessions was something he was very good at. Over the next 2 days, Marcus worked systematically. He used his military investigative training to build an airtight case. He interviewed every family Derek had harassed, getting written statements and gathering evidence. He photographed Derek's fake violation notices and recorded phone calls with HOA board members who had been tricked. Marcus also did background research on Derek that went deeper than anything the local police had done. He found Derek's employment records, his criminal history, and even his social media posts where Derek had made racist comments about the neighborhood changing. Most importantly, Marcus discovered that Derek had been collecting money from some families, claiming it was for HOA fines. This made Derek's crimes federal mail fraud and wire fraud, which carried serious prison time. Sarah watched her husband work and marveled at his focus and precision. You're building a case like you're planning a military operation. Because I am, Marcus said. Derek Mitchell thinks he's fighting some scared housewife. He has no idea he just declared war on a Navy SEAL. On Saturday morning, Marcus put the final piece of his plan into action. He called Derek's cell phone, which he had gotten from the fake business card Derek had given to Mr. Wilson. Derek Mitchell, this is Marcus Johnson. I think we need to talk. Derek had been hiding in his apartment since Thursday, drinking and trying to figure out what to do. Hearing from Marcus made his stomach drop. I don't have anything to say to you, Derek said. I think you do. See, I've been investigating you, Derek. I know about the fake HOA scheme. I know about the other families you've been harassing. I know about the money you've been collecting illegally. Derek felt sick. You don't know anything. I know you're looking at federal charges. Civil rights violations, fraud, impersonating a federal officer. That's 10 to 20 years in prison. Derek's hands started shaking. What do you want? I want to give you one chance to do the right thing. Meet me face to face, man to man. Tell me the truth about what you've been doing, and why. Maybe we can work something out. Derek was desperate and scared. He thought maybe he could convince this military guy that it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe he could talk his way out of trouble like he always had before. Where do you want to meet? Murphy's Tavern, tonight at 8. Come alone. Marcus chose Murphy's Tavern for a reason. It was Derek's territory where he felt comfortable and confident. People always revealed more about themselves when they felt safe. That evening, Marcus arrived at the tavern early. He wore civilian clothes and sat at a table in the back where he could see the entire room. He had a small digital recorder in his pocket and his phone set to record audio. Everything Derek said would be documented. Derek arrived 15 minutes late, trying to look tough and confident. But Marcus could see the fear in his eyes and the slight shake in his hands. Derek was already broken. He just didn't know it yet. Johnson, Derek said, sitting down across from Marcus. Mitchell, Marcus replied calmly. Thank you for coming. Derek ordered a beer and tried to appear relaxed. So what's this about? You said something about working things out. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Derek, I'm going to be straight with you. I have enough evidence to put you in federal prison for a very long time, but I'm a reasonable man. I want to understand why you did what you did. I didn't do anything wrong, Derek said automatically. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Derek a folder full of documents. I have written statements from 7 families you harassed. I have copies of your fake violation notices. I have records of money you collected illegally. I have security footage of you assaulting my wife." Derek's face went white as he realized how much evidence Marcus had gathered. "But here's what I really want to know," Marcus continued. "Why my family? Why did you target us specifically?" Derek took a long drink of his beer. The alcohol was making him feel braver than he should have. "You people don't belong in that neighborhood." "What people?" "You know what people," Derek said, his true feelings starting to show. "Willowbrook is for good families, American families." Marcus kept his voice calm. "My family isn't American?" "Not the right kind of American," Derek said, getting more confident. "That neighborhood was perfect before people like you started moving in." Marcus was recording every word. "People like me?" Derek leaned forward, thinking he was connecting with Marcus man to man. "Look, you seem like an okay guy, military and all, but your wife, she's uppity, doesn't know her place. Needed to be taught some respect. So you hit her." "I corrected her attitude," Derek said proudly. "Just like I've been correcting other attitudes in the neighborhood." Marcus felt his anger rising but kept it under control. "Tell me about the other families." Derek began bragging about his fake HOA scheme. The alcohol and his need to appear important made him confess to everything. He told Marcus about targeting immigrant families because they were scared to call police. He admitted to collecting money illegally and impersonating an official. "I was cleaning up that neighborhood," Derek said. "Making it safe for the right kind of people again." Marcus let Derek talk for over an hour, getting a complete confession on record. Derek admitted to every crime, explained his racist motivations, and even threatened to continue his activities if Marcus didn't stop interfering. Finally, Marcus had everything he needed. He stood up to leave, and Derek grabbed his arm. "Wait, what about working something out? You said we could make a deal." Marcus looked down at Derek with cold eyes. "Derek, I lied. There was never going to be a deal. You assaulted my wife and terrorized my daughter. You targeted innocent families because of their race. You're going to prison for a very long time." Derek's face changed as he realized he had been tricked. "You can't use anything I said. This was a private conversation." "Actually, this is a one-party consent state. I can record our conversation without telling you." Marcus showed Derek his phone, which had been recording the entire time. "Thanks for the confession." Derek jumped up, knocking over his chair. "You think you're so smart, you think you can destroy my life." "Derek, you destroyed your own life the moment you put your hands on my wife," Marcus said calmly. "I'm just making sure you face the consequences." As Marcus walked toward the door, Derek shouted after him, "This isn't over. You hear me? This isn't over." Marcus turned back one last time. "You're right, Derek, it's not over. But it's about to be." Outside the tavern, Marcus called Detective Martinez and Agent Sullivan. "I have a full confession. Derek Mitchell just admitted to everything on tape." The next morning, federal agents would arrest Derek Mitchell on multiple felony charges. But tonight, as Marcus drove home to his family, he felt satisfied that justice was finally coming for the man who had hurt the people he loved most. Derek Mitchell woke up Sunday morning with the worst hangover of his life. His head pounded, his mouth felt like cotton, and he had a terrible feeling that something was very wrong. Slowly, the memories of the night before came back to him. The issue, meeting with Marcus Johnson, the questions, the recording. Derek sat up in his bed and felt panic wash over him. Had he really told that man everything? Had he confessed to all his activities in the neighborhood? The more Derek remembered, the more scared he became. Derek called in sick to his security job and spent the day pacing around his apartment. He kept thinking about Marcus Johnson's calm, cold eyes and the way he had smiled when Derek threatened him. That wasn't the reaction of a scared man. That was the reaction of someone who already knew he had won. By Sunday evening, Derek had convinced himself that maybe it wasn't as bad as he remembered. Maybe Marcus was bluffing about having evidence. Maybe Derek could still fix this situation. He decided to take control before Marcus could do anything with whatever information he thought he had. Derek drove to the Johnson house around dinner time. He parked in the driveway and walked up to the front door like he owned the place. He needed to remind this family who was really in charge of the neighborhood. Marcus answered the door before Derek could knock. He had seen Derek's car pulling up and was ready for him. "Derek," Marcus said calmly. "I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon." Derek tried to look confident, but his hands were shaking slightly. "Johnson, we need to talk, man to man." "About what?" "About last night. About the things we discussed." Derek looked nervous and desperate. "Maybe we both said some things we didn't mean." Marcus stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "What exactly did you mean to say, Derek?" "Look, maybe I got a little carried away talking about the neighborhood situation, but I was just trying to maintain property values. That's all." Marcus studied Derek's face. The man was already starting to crack under pressure. "Property values. Yeah, you know how it is. People want to live in nice, quiet neighborhoods. Sometimes new residents need a little guidance about how things work. Is that what you call slapping my wife?" "Guidance?" Derek's face flushed red. That was a misunderstanding. Things got heated. Maybe I reacted too strongly." "Maybe?" Marcus's voice stayed calm, but his eyes got colder. "Okay, I shouldn't have put my hands on her. I admit that. But she was being disrespectful, questioning my authority. A man can only take so much." Marcus took a step closer to Derek. "Your authority?" "Derek, you're a mall security guard who was fired from the police force for beating people up. You have no authority over anyone." Derek felt his fake confidence starting to crumble. "I was trying to help the neighborhood. I was trying to keep standards high. By lying to elderly board members? By collecting money illegally? By targeting families based on their race?" "It wasn't about race," Derek said quickly, but his voice wasn't convincing. Marcus pulled out his phone and played back part of the recording from the night before. Derek's own voice came through clearly. "You people don't belong in that neighborhood. Not the right kind of American." Derek's face went white as he heard his own words. "You can't use that. You tricked me." "I didn't trick you, Derek. I gave you a chance to tell the truth, and you did. You told me exactly who you are and what you believe." Derek realized he was in serious trouble. His mind raced, trying to find a way out. "Look, Johnson, maybe we can work something out. I'll leave your family alone. I'll stop the HOA thing. We can forget this whole situation." Marcus shook his head. "It's too late for that, Derek." "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's out of my hands now. Federal agents have your confession. They have all the evidence about your illegal activities. They're building a case against you for civil rights violations, fraud, and impersonating a federal officer." Derek felt like the ground was falling out from under him. "Federal agents? The FBI takes civil rights crimes very seriously, Derek, especially when they involve systematic harassment of minority families." Derek started to panic. "You can't do this to me. I have rights." "You should have thought about rights when you were violating everyone else's," Marcus said. "My wife had the right to feel safe in her own home. My daughter had the right not to see her mother being attacked. All those families you harassed had rights too." Derek's panic turned to desperate anger. "You think you're so much better than me? You think because you were in the military you're some kind of hero?" "I think I'm a man who protects his family," Marcus said. "Something you never learned how to be." Derek stepped closer to Marcus, trying to use his size to intimidate him one last time. "You have no idea who you're messing with, soldier boy. I have friends. I have connections. I can make your life very difficult." Marcus didn't move or show any fear. "Derek, you're about to be arrested by federal agents. You're looking at 10 to 20 years in prison. You don't have any friends who can help you now." "We'll see about that," Derek snarled. "And when I get out, I'll remember this conversation. I'll remember you and your family." That was the moment Marcus's calm expression finally changed. His eyes went completely cold, and Derek suddenly understood that he was looking at someone far more dangerous than he had realized. "Derek," Marcus said quietly, "let me explain something to you. I'm a Navy SEAL. I've been trained to neutralize threats to American families. For 15 years, I've been fighting enemies overseas. But if you ever threaten my family again, I won't need to go overseas to find an enemy." Derek felt real fear for the first time in his life. This wasn't the kind of man he was used to bullying. This was someone who could destroy him without breaking a sweat. "Are you threatening me?" Derek asked, his voice cracking. "I'm educating you," Marcus said, using Derek's own words from when he had threatened Sarah. "Just like you educated my wife. But my education is going to stick." Derek backed toward his car, suddenly desperate to get away. "This isn't over, Johnson." "Yes, it is," Marcus said. "It's been over since the moment you put your hands on my wife. You just didn't know it yet." As Derek drove away, his hands shaking on the steering wheel, he knew his life was about to fall apart. Everything he had built, every lie he had told, every family he had terrorized, it was all going to come crashing down. But Derek still didn't understand the full scope of what was about to happen to him. He thought he was just facing some legal trouble. He had no idea that Marcus Johnson had built a case so thorough and complete that there would be no escape, no plea bargain, and no way out. That night, as Derek sat in his apartment drinking and feeling sorry for himself, federal agents were finalizing arrest warrants. Detective Martinez was coordinating with prosecutors, and Marcus Johnson was tucking his daughter into bed, knowing that the man who had terrorized his family would never be able to hurt anyone again. Derek Mitchell had spent weeks learning about the Johnson family's schedule, their routines, and their vulnerabilities. But he had never bothered to learn the most important thing about Marcus Johnson. When a Navy SEAL decides to protect his family, he doesn't just win. He wins completely. Monday morning came early for Derek Mitchell. At 6:47 a.m., Derek was jolted awake by loud knocking on his apartment door. Still half asleep and hungover, he stumbled to the door in his underwear and t-shirt. "Who is it?" Derek called out. "FBI. Open the door, Mr. Mitchell." Derek felt his blood turn to ice. Through the peephole, he could see several people in dark suits and bulletproof vests. This was really happening. "Derek Mitchell, you are under arrest for violations of federal civil rights law, mail fraud, wire fraud, and impersonating a federal officer," announced Agent Sullivan as Derek opened the door with shaking hands. Derek was handcuffed and read his rights while his neighbors watched from their doorways. The same neighbors he had bragged to about teaching people lessons now saw him being arrested by the FBI. As Derek was put into the back of a federal vehicle, he saw Marcus Johnson standing across the street. Marcus wasn't smiling or gloating. He just watched with the same calm expression he had worn throughout their entire confrontation. Derek finally understood that this man had never been angry or emotional. He had been calculating. At the federal courthouse, Derek learned the full scope of the charges against him. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Chen, laid out a case that was devastating in its completeness. "Mr. Mitchell, you are facing 23 federal charges," she said. "Civil rights violations against 7 families, mail fraud for collecting illegal fees, wire fraud for using electronic communications in your scheme, impersonating a federal official, and aggravated assault." Derek's court-appointed lawyer looked overwhelmed. "What kind of evidence do they have?" "Video recordings of assaults, audio recordings of confessions, written statements from victims, financial records showing illegal collection of money, and documented lies to homeowner association board members," Attorney Chen replied. "We also have social media posts and witness statements showing a clear pattern of racially motivated harassment." Derek's lawyer turned to him. "Mr. Mitchell, they have you dead to rights on all charges. We need to discuss a plea agreement." But Derek's ego wouldn't let him admit defeat. "I want to fight this. These people are lying about me." Over the next few weeks, Derek's case became a local news story. "Fake HOA officer arrested for racial harassment" was the headline in the local newspaper. The story included interviews with all the families Derek had targeted, showing the pattern of his crimes. Mrs. Chen, the elderly Korean woman, told reporters, "He made us afraid to live in our own home. We thought we had to follow his rules because we didn't know he was lying." Mr. Garcia explained how Derek had scratched his car when he refused to pay a fake fine. He said if we didn't pay, he would have our family deported. We were terrified. The real HOA board held an emergency meeting and publicly apologized to all the families Derek had harassed. Mr. Wilson, the elderly board president, was embarrassed and angry. This man lied to us and used our trust to hurt innocent people. We failed our community by not checking his credentials. As more details came out, Derek's case attracted attention from civil rights organizations. The NAACP and the Anti-Defamation League both issued statements supporting the prosecution. Derek's crimes became an example of how racist harassment could be disguised as official authority. Derek's trial began 3 months after his arrest. By then, Marcus had returned to his military duties, confident that justice would be served. Sarah testified about the assault and the fear it had caused her family. Maya, now in counseling to deal with her trauma, didn't have to testify because the security camera footage clearly showed everything. Derek's defense attorney tried to argue that his client was just overzealous about neighborhood standards and that his actions weren't racially motivated. But the evidence was overwhelming. Derek's own recorded confession played in court was particularly damaging. "You people don't belong in that neighborhood," Derek's voice said clearly through the courtroom speakers. "Not the right kind of American." The jury took less than 4 hours to find Derek guilty on all 23 counts. At sentencing, Judge Patricia Williams was harsh in her judgment. "Mr. Mitchell, you used fake authority to terrorize innocent families based on their race and ethnicity. You targeted people who you thought couldn't fight back. You collected money illegally and assaulted a woman in front of her child. This court finds your actions reprehensible and deserving of the maximum penalty." Derek was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 12 years. He was also ordered to pay $47,000 in restitution to the families he had harassed and banned from ever living in or visiting Willowbrook again. As Derek was led away in handcuffs, he finally understood the full consequences of his actions. Had thought he was picking on a helpless woman whose husband was away. Instead, he had attacked the family of a Navy SEAL who had the skills, resources, and determination to destroy him completely. The Willowbrook community changed after Derek's arrest and conviction. The real HOA board implemented new policies requiring background checks for anyone claiming to represent the association. They also established a community watch program that actually protected all residents, regardless of race or ethnicity. Marcus and Sarah became leaders in the new community efforts. Sarah organized neighborhood barbecues and events that brought families together. Marcus helped establish a veterans support network that included several other military families in the area. Maya recovered from her trauma with the help of counseling and the support of new friends in the neighborhood. Children who had been taught to avoid her family by their parents gradually began playing with her as their parents learned better. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who had given Sarah cookies and warnings on her first day, became one of Sarah's closest friends. "I was wrong to treat you with suspicion," she admitted. "You and Marcus have made this neighborhood better, not worse." 6 months after Derek's sentencing, the Willowbrook community held its first annual Unity Day celebration. Families of all backgrounds came together for food, games, and fellowship. The event was held in the park where Sarah had first noticed parents pulling their children away from Maya. Marcus stood with his family, watching children of all races play together while their parents talked and laughed. Maya was on the swing, set with 3 of her best friends, her laughter carrying across the park. "Do you ever think about Derek?" Sarah asked her husband. Marcus considered the question. "I think about the lesson. Evil happens when good people do nothing. Derek was able to hurt people because no one stood up to him. And now everyone knows that this community protects all its families. That's Derek's real legacy. He taught us that we have to stand together." Sarah smiled and squeezed Marcus's hand. "I'm proud of how you handled this. You could have just hurt him, but you chose justice instead." "Violence would have made me like him," Marcus said. "Justice made sure he can never hurt anyone else." As the sun set over Willowbrook, Derek Mitchell sat in his federal prison cell beginning the first day of an 18-year sentence. He had learned too late that actions have consequences, and that some people fight back with more than just words. Marcus Johnson had kept his promise to his daughter. The mean man would never hurt Mommy again. And in protecting his own family, Marcus had protected every family in Willowbrook from people like Derek Mitchell. The story of the fake HOA officer became a cautionary tale that spread far beyond their small community. It reminded people that real authority comes from law and justice, not from badges and bullying. And it showed that sometimes the person you choose to victimize might be someone with the skills and determination to ensure that justice is served completely. Derek had thought he was dealing with just another family he could intimidate and control. He never imagined he was declaring war on a Navy SEAL who would use every skill he had learned in service to his country to protect the people he loved most. In the end, Derek learned that some fights you simply cannot win.